All right, so let me start off and say this again. Difficult periods are generally followed by easy periods and vice versa. That applies to, well, I'm going to apply it to metals. Metals have been in a very difficult period ever since the summer of 2020. It's been stuck in basically, this is the handle of that large cup and handle pattern. This churning sideways period, been very difficult to make any sustainable gains. I warned my subscribers back here when we got the bottom, I noted this 3B bottom in real time for my subscribers. And I said at the time, I said that there's a decent, maybe even a good chance that this was the final 8-year cycle low in gold. And either way, I think that the difficult time is done, and we're about to enter an easy period where the market is trending and it's easy to make money. And so my warning was, during this period of time, the only way to make money was to trade in and out quickly. But once the difficult period is over and we get into an easy period, you have to change tactics. You have to convert to a trend following strategies, and you don't want to get knocked out of your positions prematurely. You want to just hang on. So you don't want to, in my exact words were, you don't want to fuck up the easy phase by continuing to use the strategies that worked during the difficult phase. And I warned that plenty of people were going to, no matter how much I try to warn people not to do this, human nature never changes, so they still do it. So I said I was going to get my popcorn ready, and I was going to watch as, a lot of people proceed to fuck up the easy phase. And so here's what I'm looking at, and this is, if you don't back off and look at the big picture from time to time, you miss these things. So we had a major support zone here right at, let's call it about, 16, let's just call it 1670-ish, that held. It held here, and then it broke, tried to recover, another attack from the cartel. They broke it again, rejected here, and then we started what I think is the easy phase, and we recovered. And so if you look at this long-term chart here, you can see the cartel is on its heels now. They have not been able to hold gold below this, what was support, and then became resistance, and now we're back above it, so it should now be support again. I doubt that it's going to be tested anymore, because I think we're in the easy phase. But if you take a step back and you look at the long-term chart, you can see that the cartel is in trouble. And by cartel, I mean the bullion banks. They are the government's agency to try and keep the metal suppressed. And governments have a vested interest in trying to keep metal suppressed, especially if they're trying to control inflation. You can't have the stated goal of trying to control inflation and then watch the gold and silver skyrocket higher. It just, it's a warning sign that you're losing that battle, basically. So there is always going to be attempts by governments to keep metals suppressed, especially during periods where they've got an inflation problem, and like now where the Fed is raising rates ostensibly to control inflation, and that is failing. They have not been able to keep gold suppressed below this resistance zone. So that's the gold chart. You can see from this gold chart that the cartel is in trouble. They have lost this breakdown that they have fought so hard to All right, so now moving on to silver, we've got that same pattern here. Your major attack to drive silver back below this support zone, but that is now in the process of failing. I've looked on a lot of the brokerage or metals dealer sites, and there's starting to be a lot of silver that is out of stock. So they've created shortages in the silver market with these artificial attacks to try and drive price artificially down lower, and it is starting to fail. They're starting to lose this war in silver as well. We've made our first attempt to recover the 200-day moving average. Big attack the last couple of days, drove it back below it, but today, which is Wednesday, they've lost that battle again. Silver is back above the 200-day moving average and back into this resistance zone, and I'm quite convinced that silver is going to continue higher and break this suppression to try and hold it below this resistance zone. And then in the miners, which have borne the biggest brunt of the attacks, you can look from here. This was more or less just a straight down shot. This doesn't happen naturally. This was an attack on the miners to try and keep the metals suppressed. But in the process, they just drove price way too far below this 200-day moving average. I noted this to my subscribers. I said, we're going to have a regression event. They've stretched price too far to the downside. They're not going to be able to hold this beach ball underwater. And it's going to result in a violent move back to the upside. And that's what is in progress here. And you can see we're right at this resistance zone now. And the bullion banks are not going to be able to keep this suppressed either. Price is going to go back through this and recover this resistance zone. It's going to retest the 200-day moving average, and I'm pretty much convinced that we're going to go probably far to the upside, especially if this is a final 8-year cycle low in the metals. So this was where I was suggesting people invest was in the mining stocks, alongside having their physical gold and silver positions. My suggestion was that this was finally the opportunity to get into positions in the miners, because the suppression by the bullion banks they had overdone things to the downside massively, and they were not going to be able to hold the price down. They weren't going to be able to hold this beach ball underwater, and it was going to result in a violent move to the upside, and that is what is in progress, and it's just a matter of time, maybe only a matter of a few days here before they lose this resistance zone as well, and the miners follow gold and silver and recover the attacks that drove it down below these support zones. So I think there's still lots of potential yet in this sector, in the miners, and especially if this was a final 8-year cycle low, then we've got anywhere from 2 to 5 years of potential left, and we should get our bubble phase during this 8-year cycle. So massive amount of potential in the months and years ahead in this sector, and all of this suppression of the actual metals and the mining stocks, all it has done is guarantee that the upside is going to be even greater than it would have been naturally if they'd just let the market trade freely and not try to artificially suppress these prices to try and fool the market into thinking that there's, or to try and fool the market into controlling inflation. It's not going to work. Inflation is going to continue no matter how much they try and suppress the metals, and all they're going to achieve in the end is much bigger moves to the upside, a much bigger bubble phase in gold and silver and mining stocks in the end than if they just let the market trade freely. So, like I said, I knew there's going to be plenty of people that are going to screw up the easy phase of this period in the metals, and I watched it. I watched it unfold with this minor little pullback. It wasn't even deep enough to push the 5-day RSI back to oversold before we started higher again, and I watched people panic, sell, quit, the exact things that I predicted was going to happen did happen. And of course, all they did was they sold at the bottom right before the next move up begins. And it'll happen during the next pullback and the one after that and the one after that. And so the vast majority of people, unless they have listened to me and invested in physical gold and silver, they're going to mess this up during every one of these pullbacks. And they're going to miss big chunks of the rally, or they're going to miss all of the rally because they can't trade the easy phase, or they're trying to trade the easy phase with the same strategies that work during the difficult phase, and it just doesn't work that way. You have to switch strategies when you get into an easy phase of trading. You have to take your positions, hang on, don't worry about minor pullbacks. They get recovered. And here's a classic example right here.